I think that one of the best things that you can paint to practice your brushwork is a tree. And the reason why this works so well as a brushwork exercise is because you're using a variety of brushes, you're getting a variety of edges, you can practice wet into wet painting, you can do dry brushwork. It covers a wide range of skills that are important to keep developing and practicing. So this is something easy that you can do that's going to get your brushes going, it's going to get you thinking and working on brushwork. So let's check it out. Here are the 3 brushes. I might use a couple others. We'll see how it goes once I get into it. So this is a silver black velvet size 16. I like this because it's a looser brush and it's really good for texture on trees and that type of thing. Plus it holds a decent amount of paint and water. So I'll be using this probably for the bulk of the tree. And then I usually have a smaller synthetic brush if I want to get some darker painting and put it in while things are still wet. So I like this brush a lot too. This is a sign writer's brush. It's probably $8. It's a cheap brush, but it holds a lot of water and a lot of paint, and you can make some really fine lines with this brush. What I typically use for my greens is cobalt turquoise and raw sienna. So that combo makes a kind of a natural, like olivey green color. So for this exercise, let's just mix a decent little puddle of these 2 colors. Okay, so that's ready to go. And then typically if I'm going to paint a tree, I like to mix a couple different values and a couple different colors at the same time. So I'm going to take another one of these silver black velvet brushes. This one is size 14. And I'm going to mix another shade of green. I'm going to use some burnt sienna this time. Burnt sienna with this cobalt turquoise. And so this is making more of a cooler green. Okay, so now I have 2 greens mixed up on 2 brushes, and I don't really care if they mix together on my palette. I think that's fine. One thing that it's good to practice is holding the brush further back. By holding it back here, you're going to get some more loose brush marks than if you're holding it really close to the front and being really tight with your brush. It's going to look differently if you're holding your brush back here. So trees, I don't want to stress about trees. They're free-form shapes. I just want to be expressive and get something down. And also, I use rough textured paper. So part of what I want to do, I'm kind of painting at an angle so I can take advantage of the texture of this paper. So let's just dive in and see what happens. So I'm holding the brush further back. And when you do that, you get these looser, more expressive brush marks. And one thing you want to remember when you're painting a tree is you don't need to fill the whole thing in. Leave little gaps. It looks more natural that way. Okay, so I've put down some brush marks. What do I want to do next? I'm taking that second brush that I mixed some darker value, and while this is wet, mix in some other values. You know, you can start to give your tree some form, some shadow. That just looks less flat than one solid shape of all one value. And I'm practicing these loose brush marks. This is why this exercise is such good practice. Now I'm going to take my synthetic brush. Let's take some neutral tint and raw umber, maybe a little bit of cobalt blue. Now this is a thicker consistency. So I can start to find some places to drop in some branches. So you can just work on your brush mark there. Work on your brush marks, have fun. Be creative with it. So while this is still damp, is there anything else I want to do? What I'm going to do now is take my sign writer's brush, this smaller brush that allows me to put in more fine marks, and I'm going to mix in some more of this thicker mixture. And you don't have to go crazy with these details, but the fun part about this exercise is just practicing these different brush marks. So you want some branches that come off this tree. You can do some fine lines with this. A little more water on it. You can hold this little sign writer's brush further back. And just practice these things. It's fun to do these things that don't really have any consequence. You know, if this doesn't look like a good tree, it doesn't really matter. It's just a little practice exercise. When you tend to do a full painting, sometimes you feel really, tentative, and you make it very precious, and every mark has to work. So you're afraid to take chances. Well, if you're not doing these type of exercises and you're not taking chances in your painting, how are you supposed to grow and get better? So that's why these types of exercises are so good for that. Another thing you can do is, I like to take my palette knife and I take the tip of it. And if you want to scratch out some other branches, you're just adding another lighter value into your tree. Makes it even more interesting. So there's my tree. Let's just keep going with this a little bit. Say we want to connect it to the ground. I'm going to take my brush, the larger brush I'm using with some of this green pigment. I want to hold it further back, and this is a good thing to practice too. Practice pushing your brush. Push it, turn it. Just see what kind of mark you can make. Have fun with it. When else are you going to do these types of things if you don't practice them? Maybe we load up, put a little tree over here. Turn your brush, see what it can do. So that's the general idea for this exercise. Paint a tree, practice moving your brush around, turn it in different ways, practice with different sized brushes, practice your mixing. There's so many things that you can do in a single practice exercise like this. I hope it helps you understand the value of doing these types of practices that gets you using your brushes, that gets you painting loose, working with your brushwork. One more thing I wanted to mention before I go is, if you haven't checked out my free video lesson, 8 tips to avoid overworking your painting, follow the link below. When I was first learning to paint, this was one of my biggest struggles, was overworking my painting. You can follow the link below or follow the link in my bio if you're on Instagram, and I'll see you next time.